Hello and welcome to Rights and Recourse, a program that tackles the issues of constitutionality, bringing you information and analysis. My name is Dumila Mateza. Remember, you can also be part of our discussion today by tweeting us at Rights and Recourse, or alternatively email your thoughts to rightsandrecourse@sabc.co.za. With the advent of democracy in South Africa in 1994, a human rights culture was made the cornerstone of the new constitutional dispensation, and a wide-ranging set of human rights, including socio-economic rights, was inscribed in the Bill of Rights and incorporated in the final constitution of 1996. The object was a complete transformation of our society from a culture that was oppressive, secretive, and profoundly disrespectful of basic human rights into a human rights-based culture in which human dignity of all is both respected and celebrated. Today on Rights and Recourse, we take a hard look at the Chapter 9 institutions, their role and mandate, and their relationship with Parliament. But first, let's have a look at this insert.
We, the people, are also forced to appreciate now more than ever before the collective wisdom of the drafters of our Constitution in ensuring that, and I quote, there is separation of powers between the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, with appropriate checks and balances to ensure accountability, responsiveness, and openness. Additionally, one of the crucial elements of our constitutional vision is to make a decisive break from the unchecked abuse of state power and resources that was virtually institutionalized during the apartheid era. To achieve this goal, we, the people of South Africa, adopted accountability, the rule of law, and the supremacy of the Constitution as values of our constitutional democracy. For this reason, public office bearers ignore their constitutional obligations at their peril. This is so because constitutionalism, accountability, and the rule of law constitute the sharp and mighty sword that stands ready to chop the ugly head of impunity off its stiffened neck. It is against this backdrop that the following remarks must be understood, and I quote, certain values in the Constitution have been designated as foundational to our democracy. This in turn means that as pillar stones of this democracy, they must be observed scrupulously. If these values are not observed and their precepts not carried out conscientiously, we have a recipe for a constitutional crisis of great magnitude. In a state predicated on a desire to maintain the rule of law, it is imperative that one and all should be driven by a moral obligation to ensure the continued survival of our democracy, close quote. And the role of these foundational values in helping to strengthen and sustain our constitutional democracy sits at the heart of this application.
Welcome back to discuss the topic today. In the studio with me, Mr. Advocate Kevin Malunga, Deputy Public Protector, and on the line from Durban, we are joined by retired Constitutional Court Judge, Justice Zak Yaqub. Gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to the viewers at home.
I just want to find out whether the judge is there. Judge, are you there? Are you with us? Well, we seem to have we don't have the judge yet, but let's continue. What does this judgment, the Thursday judgment, mean by the Constitutional Court mean for Chapter 9 institutions, and particularly the Public Protector?
Yes, it is a watershed moment for the constitutional democracy of the country. In other words, for this particular project of the post-94 project, the constitutional project, if you want to call it that, has been decisively affirmed that as Chief Justice Mogoeng has correctly pointed out, that accountability, rule of law are basically the cornerstones of this particular democracy. And we were created specifically for that purpose. Whenever we travel, we find that other countries don't necessarily have as robust the kind of measures that we have to make people account. And it was a uniquely South African brand in many cases. For example, the public protector. We are a public protector of almost like nowhere else in the world.
But some people say
yes,
the public protector's duties, we heard that a lot in the running up to the Constitutional Court judgment, that the public protector's duties are that of an ombudsman.
Not quite. In fact, that had been clarified by the courts much earlier on. The Mail and Guardian case, which I think was decided in 2009, said it's an ombudsman-like institution. It goes much further. It's also an anti-corruption directorate. It has a lot of powers that the traditional ombudsman doesn't have. So we are literally a public protector in the true sense of the word. There are some ombudsman-like functions that are incorporated in there, but I think as part of the unfortunate discourse that came through, there was an attempt to belittle the office, which really has not worked because the court has decisively made that very clear. And so, as I said, for us as the public protector, it's an opportunity to do our work, to actually hold the state accountable. Remember, in terms of our mandate, we have a mandate over all layers of the state. Where there's an allegation of impropriety or an allegation of irregular conduct by a state official or someone performing a public function, abuse of public money, the list is all there in our Enabling Act. And this was created to avoid, as the Chief Justice is saying, the ugly head of impunity, regardless of who does it. It's not. And when the judgment was issued, I emphasized that this is not about Mr. Mateza. It's not about Mr. Y or X. It's about the principles of good governance. Because, you know, there's a link, Mr. Mateza. Whenever you go throughout the world, in countries where impunity has set in, where people have not been held to account, in probably 90% of those cases, those countries have fallen over the cliff. And even along in this very continent of ours, in this beautiful continent of ours, you travel and you see beautiful countries. You know, I won't name them, but you say, but how did this go wrong?
Let me come back to something else. This institution of a public protector or an ombudsman has its origins in Sweden, I understand.
Yes. As I said, that was with the same objective of holding the state to account. In other words, so that the idea is really to avoid a state that becomes too powerful, that becomes reckless, insensitive, and basically all the things that are listed in the Constitution and in our enabling legislation. For example, for us, the list is quite broad. As I said, for example, abuse of power, misuse of public money, even discourteous behavior. You know, it's a very broad list. Sometimes all people want is just an apology.
Discourteous behavior. You're making a point of discourteous behavior. In other words, if I were to go to a public office and we're looking for services, and I am not treated, I am told I must go away, and I can report that matter to the public.
Yes, we do have that. So I always say it's actually, our work is largely a continuum between things that are at the very basic, what you describe, someone complaining about being treated very badly and rudely, and you've got a whole range of things in between, such as abuse of power and actions or inactions that result in abuse of public money, right up to maladministration. So you really have a very broad mandate. That's why I say that it's not as simple as saying this is an ombudsman. The founders were very clever. They were very crafty in terms of saying, look, let's safeguard this democracy. Let's safeguard.
Create a checks and balances.
Yes, let's have these checks and balances. And I think it's something. It's you know, it's something that people should not be afraid of. You know, in Zulu.
While you go through our thought, let's go to a break, and we hope when we come back, we'll be joined by the judge, Judge Yakub from Durban. If you want to join our discussion, you can email us on Rights and Recourse at sabc.co.za. You can tweet us at Rights and Recourse. We'll be back after the break. There's a cell phone number on my phone. It's probably. Welcome back as we discuss the role and mandate of the Chapter 9 institutions, more specifically the Public Protector, the Office of the Public Protector, I need to say. Mr. Malunga, one of the issues that probably you were trying to say something earlier before I go to my next question.
Oh yes, I was actually highlighting the fact that even our forebears, our ancestors in this beautiful land basically crafted a saying in Zulu and in all the other Nguni languages. I'm sure they're equivalent in Tswana, Venda, and other 11 official languages. They said okunempondo akufihlwa emgodleni. Yes, meaning for those who don't speak the language that what has horns you do not hide in a sack because the horns will eventually pop out. So that was the spirit of accountability. That I think they were probably talking about stock theft back then. Yeah, but it's the same principles, that transparency, keeping everything out in the open. These were what these institutions were created for, and they're doing an excellent job. And I think what happens is, as the other point I was trying to emphasize, that all over the world, in countries where impunity has been allowed to become the norm, there has been decline politically, economically, there's been conflict, and so forth. I asked the number of authors who confirm this. Is an author called Amartya Sen, a very established development economist, who actually, in many of his books, establishes this, that, you know, if there are no free and fair elections, if there's impunity and so forth, the likelihood there's economic decline. And likewise with us, for example, when this judgment was released, the rand allegedly improved. Of course, there are so many factors that are at play in a currency, but the rule of law is one of those.
Is one of them, because that's what the investors are looking for.
Yes, absolutely.
The other question that there seems to be a perception in some quarters that there is an overlap between the Office of the Public Protector and the Human Rights Commission.
Naturally, there would be, but I think the Constitution makes it very clear, and of course the Human Rights Commission has its own enabling legislation. For example, we don't deal with matters such as racism and so forth and so on. But for example, you'll note that there are a number of things that we have dealt with together. For example, the right to water. You have seen our intervention at Glibland's hostel in Durban,
yes,
where the Human Rights Commission has come as well on board. We've invited them to come on board because they are very often where there are governance issues, human rights issues are at play. So we actually have a very cordial relationship with all our fellow organizations under what is known as the Forum for Institutions Supporting Democracy. So it's never a situation where we see ourselves as doing something different from the others in many ways. We are actually a collective and we cooperate. We have a system of referrals. For example, the Public Service Commission, very often, sometimes when they see that something is not really within their money, they'll send it to me or send it to Avram Adonsela and say,
Advocate, let's hold it there. I'm told we have been joined by Judge Isaac Yakub. Judge, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Hello, I'm very happy to be with you.
The question I wanted you to start with you, why was it necessary to have Chapter 9 institutions supporting the Constitution when there is a Bill of Rights and a constitutional court to do that?
Because we were part of the constitution making process, and at that time we realized that we needed something special, something different, because you have the court, you have the government, and you have parliament. And in those circumstances, we needed independent institutions which were apart from the arms of government, who would be able to determine important questions in our society. And that is why we thought at that time that elections were important, and that's why we had the Independent Electoral Commission, and a whole range of other things were important, including the Public Protector. So we thought that we needed, apart from the three arms of government, institutions which were independent of government to ensure that government, including the judiciary, does its work properly.
The other thing that I wanted to know quickly, Judge, is the fact that the judgment this week, I think in your response earlier, you made mention, you touched on the separations of powers doctrine, the fact that you have this constitutional court, you have judiciary, you have the parliament, you have all other arms of state. At some stage in this whole debacle, it was said the public protector had overstepped her mandate.
Yeah, it was said, but ultimately the court has held that the public protector did not overstep the mandate. So once the final constitutional court has decided, that is the end of that. She has not overstepped her mandate. And you see, we have to have the discipline of accepting the final judgment of a court. I had to do that whenever I made dissenting judgments in the court, and I wrote a judgment the next time, I had to accept that the majority was right. So all of us as a nation must have the discipline of accepting that the majority judgment of the Constitutional Court, and a unanimous judgment more so, is right.
Justice Yaqub, one thing I wanted to find out first, going to the public protector, I seemed when I was reading the Constitution and reading some other documents around this issue, I found that the Office of the Public Protector is unique. It's unlike the Human Rights Commission and the other commissions. It's unique from the other Chapter 9 institution. Why?
It is different because we wanted to make absolutely certain, because we understood that government in the future cannot be trusted to do everything properly because they are elected. We understood that elected people can go wrong, and that is why we have the public protector to ensure the abuse of process. It's a very interesting thing because I was with the ANC at the time, and we in the ANC agreed that somebody else would come into power tomorrow, and therefore we needed this independent institution to protect the public against abuses of power by government. And the abuse doesn't only happen by politicians. This is an interesting case of the president doing it. But, you know, there are loads of cases in which administration officials do wrong things and they are put right. So we needed that institution because whoever government is, the administration has its own way of doing things. And therefore it was vital to ensure that we had something which was easily accessible, an institution which will stand between the government and the people without lots of expenses like the Constitutional Court will entail.
Thank you for that moment. We'll come back to you, Judge. I want to come back to the studio to Advocate Malunga. Advocate Malunga, if these institutions are supposed to be supportive of oversight by Parliament, why are issues around education, grinding poverty and lack of... Why did we get here? How did you get here? Probably I should say so.
It's good you're raising that because one of the, as the judge was speaking, it just hit me as he was speaking that one of our biggest impacts as an institution is on service delivery. And the largest number of complaints that reach us are service delivery related, where people are complaining about the inadequacy of the state in provisioning of one or two services. And I'll give you an example. I'm investigating Pick It Up. As you get out, as you drive out of here, you will see what is happening with service delivery there, and of course in a whole range of other instances. So we basically have to accept that the culture of accountability that the Chief Justice has mentioned is inextricably linked to the work of these particular institutions.
Well, we'll come back to that.
Yes.
I see you have a lot. You have given us a scoop here today that you are investigating. Pick It Up. Let's now take an ad break. When we return, if you'd like to join us in this discussion, you can tweet us at Rights and Recourse, and also you can email your thoughts to rightsandrecourse@sabc.co.za. Stay with us. Well, welcome back as we discuss the role and mandate of Chapter 9 institutions. And let's hear let's go further back to the insert, another insert now from the judgment that was delivered on Thursday.
The National Assembly and by extension Parliament is the embodiment of centuries-old dreams and legitimate aspirations of all our people. It is the voice of all South Africans, especially the poor, the voiceless, and the least remembered. It is the watchdog of state resources, the enforcer of fiscal discipline and cost effectiveness for the common good of all of our people. It also bears the responsibility to play an oversight role over the executive and state organs and to ensure that constitutional and statutory obligations are properly executed. For this reason, it fulfills a preeminently unique role of holding the executive accountable for the fulfillment of the promises made to the people through the State of the Nation address, budget speeches, policies, legislation, and the Constitution duly undergirded by the affirmation or oath of office, constitutionally administered by the judiciary to the executive before their assumption of office. Parliament also passes legislation with due regard to the needs and concerns of the people of South Africa. The willingness and obligation to do so is reinforced by each member's irreversible public declaration of allegiance to the Republic, obedience, respect, and vindication of the Constitution and all law of the Republic to the best of her abilities.
Well, they are the Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa. I don't know what's happening now, guys. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know what was going on. Okay, after the okay. You'll start on me? Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
4, 3,
Well, that clip there was a continuation of the judgment delivered on Thursday by the Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa. I'm going back first of all to Judge Yacoub in Durban. Judge, one thing I needed to find out, I asked this question a number of times. We are a constitutional democracy and not a parliamentary democracy. Does Parliament understand that?
I don't think so. And the Chief Justice's statement that the judgment that you played now makes that quite clear, that Parliament should understand that when the majority is elected, they are not there for the majority. They are there for everyone. Because the Chief Justice made it quite clear that all the people of the country, not only those who voted for those in power, have to be benefited by Parliament. And I think that Parliament does not understand the Constitution. I would be surprised if half of the members of Parliament knew the Bill of Rights. I would be surprised if they understood it. I'd be surprised if they internalized it. Because if they did, how could parliamentary members, all of the people who are part of the ANC, many of whom I respect, how could they have ever begun to think that the cattle place and the chicken place and the swimming pool and the amphitheater were for security?
Am I right to believe? Am I right to believe, Judge, that, my apologies, am I right to believe that the Chapter 9 institutions are there to oversee the implementation of the rights espoused in Chapter 2 of the Constitution?
Well, that's one of the reasons. But the public protector is a different institution. It is there not to oversee, but it is there to stand between the government and the people, so that when people are troubled by government and by bad actions of government, the public protector can sort it out. So it's a different thing. The Auditor General's role is different because they will make sure that money is spent properly. The Electoral Commission has to make sure that elections are conducted properly. So there are different roles and different things.
The other thing is, let me stay with you, Judge. There's something I need to get out of the way quickly. I came across a line, I think it was in the Public Protectors Act, that says no person or organ of state may interfere with the functioning of these institutions.
The Constitution says so too.
Yes, I think it's a Constitution, yes.
So the Constitution says so. So I cannot understand how it is that parliamentarians did not realize, because obviously one expects parliamentarians to know the Constitution. Did they not understand that they needed to protect the public protector? They needed not to interfere with the public protector. And I would love to see a statement by a parliamentarian. It's not a matter of law, it's a matter of common sense. Did they think, as parliamentarians, that they were protecting the public protector and protecting that independence when they did what they did? It's not a big question of law, it's a question of common sense. And all parliamentarians should have known that they were messing around with the public protector.
The Advocate
Yes.
Malunga, the issues around the public protector, can the Office of the Public Protector or any of the other Chapter 9 institutions be deliberately be strangled with regards to their budgets because of the way the budgets are allocated?
Well, there certainly is that perception, and of course we have an ongoing dialogue with Treasury and of course Parliament to motivate for more funding ourselves. So I would hope certainly that if that has been so, that this judgment will chart a new future where people understand that the work of these institutions is very critical in asserting the rule of law, in asserting accountability, and that it's really not negotiable in the sense that that our remedial action, and let me correct people, it's not recommendations. Our remedial action is something that you have to take into account, whether you like it or not. If you don't like it, you go to court.
That's semantics.
Yes, it's not semantics. It is not semantics. And for the judge, Chief Justice Mogoeng, made it very clear. And if the drafters, unfortunately, Justice Yakubu is one of them, if they had wanted this to be recommendations, they would have said so. Yeah, a recommendation is a type of remedial action. You can say as remedial action, you put in recommendations, you put directives, but the term recommendation doesn't appear.
Let's hear from the judge. Why did
Yes.
they decide to use remedial action instead of recommendations?
The bottom line of the judgment is this, that when they got the report of the public protector, they were entitled to have another investigation if they wanted to. But once they got the investigation result, they couldn't choose to go against the public protector because that was like self-help, taking the law into your own hands, almost like criminal conduct.
Isn't it true that public protector's report can only be reviewed by a court of law?
I think that's right. I think it can only be reviewed by a court of law. And until such time that you set it aside, the only way you can respect and protect it is to abide by it. You know, government makes lots of administrative decisions which have to be obeyed until the administrative decisions are set aside. And they do it all the time. And the public protector's decisions have to be at least worth as much as administrative decisions. And it is shameful that the public protector's decision was challenged in the way in which it was, And I wonder how many millions of rand were spent in the Constitutional Court case, which could have been spent for housing and all sorts of things.
The other thing, Judge, Mr. Malunga, you can come in here if you want to after the judge has given his response. This apparently, the office apparently has its origin in the negotiation process where it was unanimously decided and agreed for the establishment of an independent, impartial ombudsman, which with substantially expanded powers to investigate, review the regularity and legality of administrative action. Are we having second thoughts about why we had this? We set up this office?
No, I think it is wonderful that we have these institutions.
I think let's keep that thought, George, and then we can give a response after the break. We need to go to a break. If you'd like to join us, you can tweet us at Rights and Recourse. You can send us an email at rightsandrecourse@sabc.co.za. Stay with us. In his judgment, Judge Mogoeng spoke at length about the role of Chapter 9 institutions and specifically the Office of the Public Protector.
Like other Chapter 9 institutions, the Office of the Public Protector was created to strengthen constitutional democracy in the Republic. To achieve this crucial objective, it is required to be independent and subject only to the Constitution and the law. The Constitution demands of it, as with other sister institutions, to be impartial and to exercise the powers and functions vested in it without fear, favor, or prejudice. I hasten to say that this would ordinarily be required of an institution whose powers or decisions are by constitutional design always supposed to be, I beg your pardon. I hasten to say that this would not ordinarily be required of an institution whose powers or decisions are by constitutional design always supposed to be ineffectual. Whether it is impartial or not would be irrelevant if the implementation of the decisions it takes is at the mercy of those against whom they are made. It is also doubtful whether the fairly reasonable budget, offices, and staff all over the country, and the time and energy expended on investigations, findings, and remedial actions taken would ever make any sense if the Public Protector's powers or decisions were meant to be inconsequential. The constitutional safeguards in Section 181 would also be meaningless if institutions purportedly established to strengthen our constitutional democracy lacked even the remotest possibility to do so. We learn from the sum total of Sections 181 and 182 that the institution of the Public Protector is pivotal to the facilitation of good governance in our constitutional dispensation. In appreciation of the high sensitivity and importance of its role, regard being had to the kind of complaints, institutions, and personalities likely to be investigated, as with other Chapter 9 institutions, the Constitution guarantees the independence, impartiality, dignity, and effectiveness of this institution as indispensable requirements for the proper execution of its mandate. It is with this understanding that even the fact that the Public Protector was created not by national legislation, but by the supreme law of the Republic to strengthen our constitutional democracy, that its role and powers must be understood. The Office of the Public Protector is a new institution, different from its predecessors. And only when we became a constitutional democracy did it become the public protector. That carefully selected nomenclature alone speaks volumes about the role meant to be fulfilled by the public protector. It is supposed to protect the public from any conduct in state affairs or in any sphere of government that could result in any impropriety or prejudice. The public protector is thus one of the most invaluable constitutional gifts to our nation in the fight against corruption, unlawful or undue enrichment, prejudice and impropriety in state affairs, and for the betterment of good governance.
Chief Justice once again, but first of all, before we respond to what the Chief Justice is saying, probably we have asked that question earlier because it plays right into what the Chief Justice is saying. I don't know whether, George, do you want to have a first bite on it?
Of course, the Chief Justice is obviously right. That's the first thing I have to say. The second thing I have to say is that if you compare the protection afforded to the independent institutions and what judges are supposed to do in terms of another section of the Constitution, the public protector and all these institutions are supposed to be impartial and supposed to decide things without fear, favor, or prejudice, like judges, actually. So if you compare the two sections, the Constitution made it quite clear that institutions, Chapter 9 institutions, are supposed to be and supposed to have the same characteristics as judges. And therefore, they should be afforded the same respect as judges.
Mr. Malunga, I don't know whether you want to comment on that question I posed as to whether are we having second thoughts why we have this office.
I don't think that the majority of South Africans feel that way because they use it by the thousands. This is an institution that helps the over 50 million people who are South Africans and the rest who are also living in the country who need assistance with the refugee issues and immigration issues. So all these people benefit from the work of the institution. As I said, what is known are the high-profile cases in the media, but by and large, on a day-to-day basis, we deal with the person we call Gogo Dlamini, the lady who wants her pension from a certain department after retirement, people want service delivery, and so forth and so on. So I certainly do not think that there's a second thought. In fact, I think people want them to be enhanced. People are saying, you know, sometimes there are people who approach us and say, where can we give you money? Can I donate my savings to you? Because they are so happy about what the work the work has done.
The other question from subsection 5 of 181 says these institutions are accountable to Parliament, to the National Assembly, and must report all on their activities and the performance of their functions to the Assembly at least once a year.
Yes.
I think you do that almost every year.
Yes, we go more than once actually.
I picked up something else, that the Public Protector's report must be made public. I know the investigation, before when you are investigation, you give the people who are implicated a chance to go through.
Yes, unless they have seriously compelling security and other national security and other interests, we generally make these public. And as I said, it's in the spirit of transparency. This is a very, very liberal constitution, if I can call it that, that really encourages these values of openness and accountability and fairness to be part of our national fiber, and this is basically what we do as we do our work every day. But I just want to latch on to something that the Chief Justice raised, and I think Justice Yakub raised as well, the fact that these institutions were also meant to assist the ordinary person who cannot afford litigation. Even you and me, Mr. Mateza, even though we earn decent salaries, we cannot afford litigation. We can litigate for about 3 days, and then we start looking at the bank and say, no, this is not working out. Because litigation by its nature is very expensive. So a lot of the people we assist are people who can't afford this. And even those so-called middle classes would not be able to manage that. So it's in that spirit that I certainly do believe that people actually want these institutions strengthened and protected.
Well, if you'd like to join us, you can join our discussion on Twitter. You can tweet us at Rights and Recourse, or you can email your thoughts at Rights and Recourse at sabc.co.za. We'll be back after the break. I want to go back to Welcome back. Judge Yakub, there's something else I wanted to ask you is Parliament did set in motion an ad hoc committee that was to look at all the Chapter 9 institutions, and one thing they were talking about is to lump all the human rights Chapter 9 institutions together. Was that going to work?
I think that some institutions may have worked together, like the Commission for Gender Equality, the Commission in relation to languages, and so on. But I think that the Public Protector, the Auditor General, and the Electoral Commission are so different that you can't lump them together. So I don't think even that the recommendation said that. So I think some of the institutions may be put together, but the Electoral Commission, the Auditor General, and the Public Protector perform very, very different functions, and you can't lump those together.
The other thing, both of you can come in here, there is a concern with the coming to an end of the Public Protector's term of office in October, that South Africans are not aware that they can participate in the selection of a new Public Protector.
Okay. Yes, I think the process is that there's a nomination. So anyone can nominate anyone. And that's basically how it works.
Can you be nominated?
Yes, I actually get asked that question every single day. Absolutely.
The Judge, I don't know whether you're aware of a groundbreaking investigation that was done by Judge Anton Mostert in 1978 when he was asked.
I remember that well.
Yes,
yeah.
When he was asked to investigate the foreign exchange regulations, and then he stumbled onto something. Was that not the kind of work that a public protector would do? Because we did have a public protector then, but Judge Anton Mostert was very brave.
He was very brave at the time. And it was very difficult because the apartheid government was difficult and complicated. But I think that I would have thought that we did not require that level of bravery, because the harassment of Trudy Madonsela was quite fascinating for me to watch. They troubled her all the time, messed her around like mad, like the apartheid government used to do to people like Mostert. So I don't know whether we are returning to that culture or whether we are going to respect our institutions.
I want to come to something else here quickly before we're quickly running out of time. There was a concern in the report by Professor Kader Asmal that I was referring to earlier, that all of these organizations, Chapter 9 institutions, are urban-based. What's happening in the provinces?
Okay. One of the unique aspects about the public protector is that if you go to section 182, subsection 4 of your constitution, you will see that with the public protector, it's very unique. It says the public protector must be accessible to all persons and communities. That is section 182.4. So as part of our strategic planning, as part of our reporting back to Parliament, we actually use that that injunction in the Constitution. And as a result, even with funding, when we want funds, remember we've got about 20 offices nationally in all the provincial capitals and some regional offices. So it's something that it cannot be any other way, Mr. Mateza. Because as the point I've been making is that we are about that vulnerable person, and the Chief Justice in his judgment eloquently put. Yes, yes. And by the way, before we run out of time, I think many people need to apologize to the Chief Justice. In terms of the kind of vitriol that was spewed towards him. I used to be his chief of staff, by the way, and certainly this is a seminal judgment which has been well delivered, and really, I think a lot of people definitely probably do owe him an apology.
Crafted.
Yes.
So I know the Chief Justice, and he would never want an apology from anybody. He's a good man. He has done his work, and
yes.
That is absolutely fine.
Yes, absolutely, Justice Jacob. I think I like that.
The other question that was that the ad hoc committee of Parliament that was led by Professor Kader Asmal, the late Professor Kader Asmal, dealt with the issue of ministerial involvement in these Chapter 9 institutions. How does it work with the public protector?
Please come again.
The ministerial involvement. How far does a minister come in? How far does a minister?
Can I add a question?
Okay,
can
yes.
I add a question? Do you have enough money to do your work? Is what I'd like to know, because that's how they can stifle you.
Oh yes, I think maybe let me start with the judge's question last. I think ultimately we don't. And the number of complaints, Justice Yakub, has grown exponentially because people are more aware about their rights and what the institution does. So the answer put in short is no. And of course we would really want to motivate for more access in terms of offices and so forth and so on. But as far as executive involvement, it would certainly be unlawful because we actually investigate the same departments. Of course, our vote comes through the Department of Justice, but we are not accountable to. We're accountable to Parliament through the Justice and Correctional Services Committee, and by default to the National Assembly as a whole, as a collective.
How much work, I know you said earlier to us, you gave us an insight into you are working on investigating the strike in Johannesburg, the Pick It Up strike.
Well, it's the governance issues that pick it up. Part of which are allegedly to blame for why they are on strike. They're not striking only about money. They're striking about what they say are governance infringements, alleged corruption, and so forth and so on. So, but it was just an example of something which you are experiencing in your own daily life, litter and stinking streets and so forth.
Does this have to do with the fact that the city of Johannesburg has asked people to collect the rubbish and take it away themselves, and then when people said then we need to get a discount, and then the city council said no, and then they said okay, we'll take you to the public protector?
No. The complaint has been in the system before.
Even before?
Yes. So this is almost a culmination. This blow up, this strike is partly a culmination of some of the issues that are at play there. And of course, SAMO and a few other entities are involved in the whole issue. But as I said, why I raised that example was to show the impact on alleged and emphasize that at this stage, alleged maladministration, the link between that and service delivery across the country.
Can I give the judge the final word here?
I just want to say that all these efforts at protecting people are very, very important. But I never anticipated when we got this independent institution that one day the president will have improvements to his own house which the public protector would have to deal with. I think that is unfortunate. There are a whole range of other under-the-radar things which the public protector has to deal with, which are wonderful and which are very, very good.
Justice,
I think, yeah.
Justice, let's leave it there. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining us. We hope to have a lot more discussions with you, especially around these issues that have to do with legal issues, especially constitutional issues. Mr. Malunga, thank you very much for your time. We would want to interact with the Office of the Public Protector, especially before she leaves her office. We'll be talking to her about her experience during this office. In this judgment on Thursday, Justice Mogoeng makes the following remarks. Certain values in the Constitution have been designated as foundational to our democracy. This in turn means that as a pillars of stones of this democracy, they must be observed scrupulously. If these values are not observed and their precepts are not carried out conscientiously, we have a recipe for a constitutional crisis of great magnitude. This has been Rights and Recourse. This program is repeated at 5 on Monday morning. Thank you to our guests from all of us here in the studio. Goodbye.